What's up, party people? We've got Survivor Teek here. I hope you've opened up your Beware Advantage because Halloween's coming up soon. uh, Episode 5 was a good one. We're really getting into the meat and potatoes of this season of Survivor now. We have some type of weird merge or twist or reallocation of tribes that's going to occur next episode. And so you can really see this current episode. You start to see the strategies, you start to see things start to really liven up a little bit. And we did get really great strategic content from each of the three tribes. And so for this strategic analysis, we'll get into that and we'll get into exactly what happened with Jeannie, who I quite enjoyed, and her unfortunate fall from grace this episode. I don't even think she'll make the jury, unfortunately. So she'll be back home trying to make fire over there instead. So let's chat about the tribes right before the immunity challenge. And we did get a great sense of what was happening in each of them. We started off with Ua, the green tribe. And over there, Jeannie was talking about, once again, how I was left out of this. I'm on the bottom of the tribe again, but I'm still learning to build myself back in. I have a solid 3 now with Ricard and Shan, but I want to find this Beware advantage. And so I found this really interesting because I don't really see how her finding this advantage would help the tribe. Like this, she knows exactly the type of advantage that Brad had. She knows that he wasn't able to vote. She knows that this wasn't activated. So here she is looking for it, and then she finds it. And then she chooses not to open it up and to tell her tribe. And we get this theme over and over again this season about do not share your advantages, especially in Ua, because somehow Shan the vacuum will suck it up out of you, which is precisely what happened. So Jeannie went into water to just kind of hang out, chill, look for fish. I'm not sure what she was doing. And in the meanwhile, Shan and Ricard were being a sneaky duo, and they essentially said, let's just open it up. Shan opened it up. Ricard had this whole strategy to, at the challenge, still try to suss out if other people also have the advantage and to figure out exactly if this can be activated. But I think this was a very weak move by Jeannie, and in a lot of ways it could have been her downfall. If Jeannie had have just found it, kept it secret, opened it up, said the friggin' phrase, she would have had this idol. She could have used it to protect herself. The whole gameplay would have been different. She probably would have idled out Ricard, to be frank with you, and then at that point, it would have been really interesting to see Jeannie and Shan work together without Shan having that number 1. And so I think this was an insane move by Jeannie, a poor strategic move, smart by Shan and Ricard to go and pick it up. But Shan put herself on the line there a little bit, and this was quite interesting to see. Shan said, you know what? I have this additional vote. I trust Ricard. I'll give Ricard this additional vote because with this idol, I may not be able to vote at all. And this is the situation that Xander's been in the past few episodes too. And so if Shan wasn't able to vote and this was powerless, then she could have still hopefully trusted Ricard to use both of those 2 votes to overtake whatever vote that Jeannie may have had. And so it was interesting to see all different advantages play together. And so excellent strategy by Shan and Ricard, very poor strategy by Jeannie. And in a tribe of 3, that's devastating. Let's jump into the Luvu tribe, the blue tribe. And so we see Sydney go for fishing, and we'll talk about this in my contender video afterwards. And she's talking about, hey, I'm the provider, I can go out here for fish. We're getting a lot of interesting Sydney content, even though she's not really involved in anything at all. So I really get the sense she'll be a big player this season, especially come the shift up. And then the more substantive talks we had was about, once again, Danny and Deshawn are chatting. Should we throw this challenge? Should we try to get Erica out? I don't understand why Erica is still public enemy number 1 on this tribe. She seems perfectly polite and nice, but we're not seeing the whole picture. So they bring in Nasir and they ask Nasir. Nasir says, no, we shouldn't throw the challenge. We get a little bit of context from Danny and being worried that all the guys are being picked off one by one, which is interesting because this is even before they know that JD was voted off, and so they're still kind of a little bit in the dark there. And like they really are in a position. There's not a lot of guys left in the game. There's really 5. The whole blue tribe as a whole could maybe pull in Xander because he's at the bottom of the yellow tribe, but they probably are thinking that there are strong allegiances between the Yasa yellow trio, between Evie, Liana, and Tiffany. They probably think that, Shan, Ricard, and Jeannie have their own thing going on. So they probably are a little bit worried, but I don't know why they're so worried about Evie and Sydney and Heather potentially flipping. We don't get a lot of context. I generally agree with Nasir. You see Nasir have a little bit of dialogue saying they always regret when you throw challenges. And it's not lost on me that Nasir's first season he ever watched was Survivor Redemption Island, one of the most famous F-ups in a challenge throw ever, when the Zapatero tribe threw a challenge to get rid of Russell, and it got entirely decimated by Boston Rob come post-merge for Boston Rob's win at that season. And had they have not thrown that challenge as they would have won, I think easily a Zapatero member would have won, and Boston Rob would not be $1 million winner of Survivor. And so Nasir's probably thinking this. How can you trust people in other tribes? Nasir was completely in the right to kind of keep everybody well together. And more interestingly, we got some content from Nasir saying, hey, I'm part of this tribe. This is music to my song. SIC in brackets, because that's exactly what he said. But you start to see that now Danny and Deshawn are starting to want to work with Nasir. You got some conversation from Danny saying, like, I need to work with Nasir even though I don't really want to work with him. That being said, you want to be in a positionally great spot. You don't have to have people like you, but you want to be in a position where they can still work with you and use you, especially to make moves moving forwards and to be a number for them. And so if Nasir can keep positioning himself in a position where I need to be a number for you, I'm not going to be the bottom number, especially come the mix-ups that are probably happening in the game, it's good to keep himself strategically positioned. I like Nasir, so I think I'm thinking through this, his kind of gameplay moving forwards. But we got some good content from Blue. Heather, Erica, I don't know what you're up to. We did get a preview confessional from Erica, and Deshawn, and so I think we're going to hear more from these Blue players as they really start to adapt to what Survivor is about, which are twists and mix-ups. We might see Erica on, a tribe with Tiffany, Liana, and maybe Shan, and we'll see if she's able to find a way in, or if she's going to be ultimately the target at the end there. So we'll see how it all shifts out. We got some content from Yasa, the Yellow Tribe, which we got a lot of content from early on in the season, and now we're kind of not seeing so much of them anymore. And so we started off with Xander and Evie starting to have a bit of a duo conversation. Xander still kind of trusts Evie. Evie's talking about how she wants to play in the middle of these different duos. And I think Evie is the one who's thinking correctly over here beyond anybody else. The mix-ups are happening. This is the reality of Survivor. You're going to have different people on your teams. So you don't ever want to have any type of bad blood. If Evie's cool with Xander, if Evie's cool with Tiff, if Evie's cool with Liana, she might end up with 1 or 0 or 2 of them on her tribe. And so she wants to make sure that whoever she ends up still on the Yellow Tribe is still a friend of hers. She still has that connection with Deshawn from when she went on that journey. So I think Evie is thinking more critically over here, but she might have lost a little bit of social capital because Tiffany and Liana were talking behind her back saying, Evie's getting a little bit too close to Xander. Let's search Xander's bag. They found Xander's advantage, which they kind of already knew from Evie, but I guess Evie didn't explain to them enough for them to fully trust her either. So I don't know how Evie's kind of trio relationship is going with the 3 women of Yasa. And then, interestingly, Evie and Xander's thinking ahead. And Xander's like, these are the women I have to play with. I don't none of them trust me, but let me try to build some trust with Tiffany. He tells Tiffany, I found this idol yesterday, but I have to say these phrases, and I said this phrase 4 days ago, and so he completely messed up his story. Tiffany caught on, and Tiffany said, I'm on 24/7, don't mess with me. And so Tiffany kind of put Xander in line a little bit. It's funny, though, because this is the same situation that we see in Nasir and Blue. It's like Tiffany may not trust Xander, but she has somebody who wants to work with her. And so Xander could be valuable for Tiffany moving forwards in this game as well. Just because it's somebody that it's basically like, do you trust the devil you know versus the devil you don't? So that's the Yellow Tribe. We get to the immunity challenge, and I think the most fun part of the immunity challenge was that the phrases were said. And so we had Ricard and Shan kind of do their whole kind of bit where they were doing their best to kind of quietly say the message, which is fun, I suppose. And so they said the broccoli line because Shan's a vegan. And then it went over to Xander. Ricard was kind of like the CEO, managing the situation. Went over to Xander. Xander said his line about the butterflies or dead relatives saying hi. And out of nowhere, Jeff's about to start the challenge. Okay, guys. And then Nasir just jumps out of nowhere and says, I'm as confused as a goat on AstroTurf. And so idols are activated according to the rules. So the 3 phrases were said. They become live idols. We get some context from Nasir before the challenge where he found it. And we got this beautiful confessional about how his daughter would help him find these advantages and everything else. And it was fun. It was game on. They had to have people sit out on this challenge, and so as we know, Blue had to set up half their team. They chose Erica, Heather, and Deshawn. Yellow side out Tiffany. I don't think there's any real surprises here. I think Blue maybe decided between Deshawn and Sydney, but Sydney's quite strong herself, so I think Blue put their best foot forwards. It would have been interesting if they did the bifurcated reward and immunity challenge instead. So they had the tarp as the reward, which is part of the immunity. But especially with Blue, if they had to choose 3 people for that reward, imagine if I had Erica, Heather, and Deshawn versus the other people. I don't know if they would have won that challenge. And so having that together was interesting because they don't have to deal with the sit-out aspect of it. So I think they ultimately made fine decisions. The challenge wasn't really that interesting. I thought overall they had to climb over a net, use a cleaver, I suppose, or a machete to cut open a rope that coconuts fell through, and use a slingshot to simply knock down 2 targets, and anybody could have done it. You don't have to specifically pick a certain player on your team. So Xander got through it pretty quick, and then it was between Nasir and Ricard. I don't think Ricard even knocked over one, and so it was Nasir who ended up doing it for the blue team, and Green very unfortunately had to go back to tribal council. And so it was kind of frustrating because I think there would have been a more interesting tribal if it was either blue to see if Erica really genuinely was the target or if there was more at play, or if it was yellow to see exactly what would have happened given that Xander had that idol. Moreover, we did get to see this journey, which is the same as normal. The interesting part over here was Shan and Liana really did seem to connect on this journey, which is critical for Shan. She doesn't have anybody other than Ricard in this game, so she needs to build more alliances. And Liana doesn't really have a lot of people either. If she's starting to feel mistrust with Evie, who was her number one, because of the Xander situation, she needs to branch out as well. So I think this is a really mutually beneficial alliance for both of them. It's really important to build connections in other tribes. You see the winners of Survivor, they often do this, where you have your people, but especially in a 3-tribe system, you can't ride or die with your people because they're going to be stuck in a minority. So you need to build those cross-tribal connections. And I think that's going to be really powerful. And you start to see the snowballs happen. It's human nature. You kind of want to be with the numbers rather than be against the initial powerful duo and try to find your own people. So I think if Shan and Liana can be an outwards powerful duo, they could get a little bit of magnetism and bring people over to their side. So I'm looking forward to that. Risk reward, Shan kept hers, Liana risked it. Not too much to say over there, but Liana got a really, really, I think, overpowered advantage. Insanely so. I'm surprised there wasn't more fanfare about this in the episode. It was a knowledge is power advantage, and I think if somebody says they have an idol or an advantage, you can basically just ask them and get it from them. It's like a steal. And you can do it right before tribal. And so part of me thinks if somebody is being a little bit overconfident and saying, look, I have this idol, I'm going to protect myself today, the other can say, hey, you have an idol, now it's mine. And so I think it can be used basically twice, because you can use it to screw somebody out of their idol, and you can also use it to play an idol. And Liana now has perfect knowledge of the 3 people who have the idols because she's aware of the whole phrase thing, which essentially everybody in green and yellow know about. Blue is maybe the only tribe that doesn't really fully know what's going on, but she probably knows exactly that it's Shan, who she trusts and she talked to about the idol, Xander, who she doesn't trust, but is at least on the yellow tribe, and Nasir. So I feel really bad for Nasir because I think given the 3 and given that the idol is still the most important advantage in the game, if I was Liana, I would consider stealing Nasir's idol sooner than later. Probably when Nasir's most in danger, so he feels confident, you steal it from him, and then you play it for yourself later on. I almost feel it's game breaking, but the thing is there's so many different types of advantages. I think there could be a way around it, and I'm not sure if Liana's going to play it the most effectively. She seems a little bit emotional to Xander situation. And even Xander, when talking to Evie, he wasn't let's go talk to Liana. He wanted to talk to Tiffany as the third person. So there seems to be some type of tension between them. I think Liana may misplay it and steal Xander's idol, which would be hilarious because Xander is stuck with this beware situation essentially since the start of the game. And so, yeah, we'll see how that all plays out. But that's the other element of it too. If Liana doesn't tell anybody and steal something, that could burn a lot of social capital for her, but she probably shouldn't tell anybody about this either. Let's jump into Tribal Council. and green scrambling. So as we know, Jeannie, she was just on the bottom of the numbers, and Shan essentially was the godmother, the godfather of this tribe. In a situation of three, we've seen this a few times in Survivor. It's different near the end of the game when it's a final three situation, because you think about who you want to sit next to at the end to build a better case for the $1,000,000. So you almost want to pick the worst person. If this was a final three situation, I think both Shan and Ricard would be clamoring over each other to bring Jeannie to the end, because Jeannie's the least strategic of the three, probably the least likely of the three at this current stage to win a season. This is the opposite. You kind of want to bring the person you think you want to be able to work with more, and you started to see this. Shan had the best confessional with respect to this style of thinking, as she said, do I bring the strategist or the loyalist? The strategist, we might be able to strategize our way through things, but he could cut me in the back quite easily, and he's more likely to. Versus the loyalist, where I'm basically going to be the one using my brain, but at least I know I can trust this number. And I think really that was the tricky part that she had. It's always interesting to see in a group of three who the two are that end up fighting against each other and who the one is sitting back making the decision. And of course, it's Shan, but Ricard and Jeannie had that moment when Shan was on her adventure with Liana. And they could have really solidified something and done the Shan blindside had they have trusted each other. And I think this really goes back to Shan episodes ago, really the first episode where Jeannie threw a vote on Ricard and they were on opposite sides of the tribe dynamic. And I think that never really fully resolved itself up until the point where Jeannie left. And so Shan was quite smart in making sure that she had polar opposites around the tribe and people who weren't going to bond together to vote against her. In that situation of three, yeah, you always want to talk to the other person and say, I'm gonna bring you, I'm gonna bring you. And I remember this happened in Survivor Philippines with Matt Singh, which was in a very similar situation as Ua is in this one, where it went down to two individuals at the end from the tribe of six. And so you had Malcolm, Denise, and Russell. And I remember between the three of them, Malcolm would talk to Russell, we're gonna get rid of Denise. Russell talks to Denise, we're gonna get rid of Malcolm. Malcolm and Denise talk and say, hey, we're together, we're getting rid of Russell. So you have basically all three plans in play. Really the only three possible plans. It was slightly complicated by the fact that there were significant advantages in play. We did have that additional vote, we did have that idol, and we saw Ricard and Shan basically fighting against each other about, you should use that idol, you should give me your additional vote. I think they were both in the right. I think Shan was going a little bit too aggressive and really pushing Ricard in that direction. But at the end of it, those could have played a role. Jeannie could have rolled the dice. I actually think she ought to have, but she probably fell to that, let me give it a go with Shan and see if this can work. Because otherwise, if she hadn't rolled the dice and Shan was loyal, it would have been a 1-1 tie vote. And it could have been that Shan would have left after that, or Jeannie would still leave. I'm not actually sure how the 1-1 tie would have broke. But Jeannie, I think it was tough. She needed to have made a play with Brad and JD earlier. I think Ricard maybe should have gone over Sarah at the start, and she should have tried to push for that because Ricard and Shan became such a strong duo. It's hard to see where her specific mistake was. I give her a lot of credit for making it to the three. If you make it to three in a tribe of six, you're usually good to make it to the next phase of the game. But unfortunately, she made it just before kind of things started to shift around. And so I know we're long on time. This has been a kind of a jam-packed strategic episode. But moving forwards, let's see how this plays out. I think Shan's in a good spot, knowing the advantage and knowing the different kind of elements in play this season. So I feel pretty comfortable about her moving forwards. I do like Evie. I do feel like she has some good connections with different people. Liana being in between Shan and Evie, who seem to be two of the more powerful players, I think puts her in quite a good spot as well. And then so you have Tiffany and Ricard, who might be part of this. I feel tricky with anybody on the blue tribe. We don't really know what their strategic chops are. We don't really know if Deshaun is a good strategist or if he's going to basically fall to the wayside. We don't know if Sydney's really going to start to make some plays either. I think there's going to be some type of alliance with Sydney, Deshaun, and Danny that are going to try to navigate themselves through these next phases. But I don't know if they've built strong enough connections with Erica, Heather, and Nasir. They might be a bit on an island, and those three may kind of fall apart, whereas Erica, Heather, and Nasir may start to bond with the other players in the game. So I think Evie and Shan, if they keep their kind of powerful, strong type A game styles, I think they can move forwards well together. So let's see how it plays out. And if you want to chat more, we'll stick around for the second part of the video. Cheers.